Welcome learner to our lecture 13, that is law of diminishing and law of diminishing equimarginal utility. Now let's talk about the Gaussian first law and second law. So here law of diminishing marginal utility, it's also called the Gaussian first law and we will discuss in the earlier lecture. So let's recap it once. As more of units of goods are consumed, the marginal utility decreases. Just look at the table. When the units of consume from first to the seventh unit, the MU become decreases, but when in the sixth unit the mu becomes 0 and after that it may be negative. Just look at the one graph here. You have seen that the mu becomes high in the first unit, but after 6 unit the mu becomes 0. It means that the tu becomes maximum, means total utility mass maximum, and after that negative marginal utility says that the total utility tends to decrease. This is the Gaussian first law. Now, let's talk about the Gaussian second law. In Gaussian second law, the law of equimarginal utility, it's also called the Gaussian second law, in which we have to satisfy the consumer behavior with indifference curve and budget line, in which the law of equimarginal utility defines that a consumer allocate in income in such a way that the marginal utility of each rupee, or maybe called as per rupee, is equal to all goods. There are two goods we have taken, MUX and MUY. When we divided the marginal utility of X divided by price of X, it's equal to the marginal utility of Y divided by price of Y. It says that both the goods the consumer has been consumed, they are equal. So let's see how it may be equal. There are two parameters that has been satisfied. We will discuss in the earlier slides, but look at one for the basic understanding. There are three units where the marginal utility of X is 10 and where the marginal utility of X divided by price is 5. For example, as we can take as X is equal to, the X unit of goods is equal to, its price is 2 and the Y good, it's equal to 1. Let's assume that the price of X good is 2 and Y goods it's 1. So what we can do, we can divide the marginal utility of X divided by price of X. We can get 5, and after that we can divide it 8 by 2, we can get 4, and after that we can divide 6 by 2, we can get 3. So let's see the second good, that is marginal utility of Y, where we can divide 8 by 1, because in the Y we can take price equal to 1, that is 8, 6 and 4. So we can say that we can now, in this particular table, we have seen that we have equalized the marginal utility of both the goods by their prices, and also we can equalize the consumer behavior and optimum allocation. Like, look at this diagram. This is good Y and this is good X, and where the budget line is tangent to indifference curve, this is the equilibrium point where marginal utility of good X and marginal utility of good Y are equal. Now, let's talk about the law of diminishing marginal utility. So here, the more you consume, the less satisfaction you get from each additional units. Here, there are three examples I have taken. The first few candies so tasty that the consumer gives higher satisfaction. But after more candies, it's still okay for the consumer. It means that the consumer are satisfied by candies. But after eating too many candies, it means the consumer will not enjoy. It means the total utility will decrease and mu becomes negative. This describes the law of diminishing marginal utility. It means that consuming the goods without interruption after a certain point, the satisfaction will be reached, and after that it may be declined. Okay, now just look at this particular example. The first slice is deletion, fourth is okay, eighth is feeling well, but it gives the low satisfaction. It means that enjoyment decreases with more consumption. This is called the law of diminishing marginal utility states. Various definition of law of diminishing marginal utility given by different economists. First, Alfred Marshall gives that says that the additional benefit which a person derived from given increase in the stock of thing diminish with every increase in the stock he has already has. Now, Gossen's first law says that the amount of satisfaction decreases as more units of commodity are consumed. We can already understood that. Now, Paul Samuelson says that as the consumption of good increases, the utility derived from each additional unit declines, as I told you in the law of diminishing MU. And Lipset says that as the quantity of good consumed increases, the marginal utility of each additional unit tends to decline, as already we seen in the earlier slide. Now, assumptions of law of diminishing marginal utility. The theory is always says some assumptions. Let's talk about one by one. The first one is rational consumer. As you know, consumer make a logic decision. So we can say is that consumer is rational. According to that, they select the good as they give the maximum satisfaction. The next is utility can be measurable according to Marshall. Utility can be measurable in cardinal number. The second assumption. The third is homogeneous units. All units of goods are identical, means same. The next is continuous consumption. So goods are consumed without interruption. Otherwise, the law will be fail. No time gap or no break between the consumption of goods. So goods can be consumed without interruption. So here again the next assumption is income is constant, no changes in income. Just look at this table and we will discuss by it in graph. Just look at it. The units are consumed from first to 7 units. We have seen that the total utility is increasing by 10, 18, 24, 28, 30, and after 5th unit to 6, it will be same. It means that it is a saturation point, and after that it may be declined to 28. Now, let's see the marginal utility, how it may be calculated. The first unit consumed, the consumer will get 10 units of satisfaction and MU is again 10. But after the second unit, consumer may be consumed, the goods may be 18 units of satisfaction, the MU is 8. It means 18 minus 10. Now the third unit, it gives 24 units of consumption and MU is 6. We have seen that the total utility is increasing by the 5th unit. We have seen that the total utility is increasing by the 5th unit, but in the 6th unit it may be fixed or saturated, and after it may be declined. But marginal utility will be declined from starting point, and it will zero when the TU is maximum or total utility may be saturated, and after that it may be negative. So let's see in the graph where TU and MU have been taken in vertical axis and unit consumed in horizontal axis. So the first unit consumed, the total utility is 10 and marginal utility is 10. After the second unit is consumed, the total utility is 18 and marginal is 8. Now the third unit is consumed, the TU is 24 and marginal is 6. We can subtract 24 minus 18. Now after the fourth unit, the total utility is 28 and MU is 4. After the fifth unit, the MU is 2 and TU is 30. And after the sixth unit, the MU is 0 and TU is 30. This is the TU's maximum point. where total utility is maximum, and mu is 0. Look at this key points table, right? And after the saturation point, the total utility it start declining at 28 and mu becomes negative to minus 2. It means that mu become negative, the tu is decreases. This is the law of diminishing marginal table and graph. Okay, now let's see the importance of law of diminishing marginal utility. The first important is basis of demand law. It means that the price may be decline, the demand may be rise, and price may be rises, the demand may falls. It is basis on the consumer equilibrium. The consumer equilibrium is to maximize the satisfaction where marginal utility is equal to marginal cost. The third is pricing policy. Firm fix the prices which is based on utility. They will not charge the higher price. The fourth important is progressive taxation. The richer people may give the higher taxes, but their utility of money is less. The fifth one is welfare economics. It helps in redistribution of income of between the richer and the poor people. So there are the importance of law of diminishing marginal utility. Okay, some theories have always been exceptions and law of diminishing mu have already exceptions. Why? Let's see one by one. Okay, first you have to start why it may be exceptions, because rare and collector item, it means the utility rises as each unit is unique and valuable. For example, a stamp collector feel more excited with each rare stamp. So here emotional value plus uniqueness are involved. It increases the utility. It will not diminish the utility. So the second is prestige and luxury good. They are the status symbol, as more consumption bring more status and price. So here utility may not be decline and mu may be fail. The next is addictive good, like alcohol, cigarette and drug. So when the consumer consume extra unit of these addictive goods, it may be gives higher satisfaction, and here law of diminishing fails. The fourth is money or wealth accumulation, where money people can buy more power, security, and opportunities. For example, rich people still values extra money for investment. So, why exception here? Money has versatile uses, so its utility may not be diminished quickly. The next is hobby and passion. For example, reading, music, and gaming. Interest and passion enhance utility. It may not be declined, so the law of diminishing mu may be fail. And the next is abnormal situation where the scarcity emergency may be arises. The utility may be fail. These are the exceptions of law of diminishing mu. Okay, now let's talk about the Gaussian second law, that is the law of equimarginal utility. The number of laymen give the various definitions. The first one is Robinson. Robinson defines equimarginal utility states that consumer allocate his expenditure in such a way that the marginal utility of each good is equalized. Again, Alfred Marshall gives that to obtain maximum satisfaction, the consumer must distribute in income in such a way the last unit of money is spent on each good yields the same amount of marginal utility we can see in the earlier slide. The third one is Ahuja. Ahuja gives says that the consumer will distribute his income between the various goods in such a way that the utility derived from the last unit of money spent on each good is equal. The next definition is the consumer will maximize total utility when the marginal utility per unit of money is spent is same for all goods. These are the layman's definition. Now let's understand the law of equimarginal utility. It can also be said as law of substitution or maximum satisfaction. So what the law of equimarginal utility says? The law of equimarginal utility says that the consumer maximizes total satisfaction by allocating income across goods so that the MU per last unit of currency spent is equal across all units. Let's take this example. For example, we have limited income, and after limited income, we can choose the goods. And what the goods we have choose, the marginal utility per last unit spent on that good is equal. It means that if we have to spend our goods on three goods, it must be equal for all. And the last one is maximum satisfaction. Here, the layman say that we can allocate our income in such a way so that we can uh, find different utilities from other goods and that are equal. So here what law of equimarginal state that marginal utility per last unit spent is equal across the goods. It means that their prices are equal along with the marginal utilities. Now, let's see the assumption of equimarginal utility. Here, we have already taken an assumption that consumer is rational in sense that he wants to get maximum satisfaction. So, let's take the assumption. The first assumption is rational consumer. The consumer is rational in sense of maximum satisfaction. The second is measurable utility. Utility can be each commodity is measurable in cardinal numbers. For example, one apple gives 10 utils of satisfaction. Again, constant marginal utility of money. Here, layman says that the marginal utility of money remains constant. It means that satisfaction from spending each dollar does not change. Money value in terms of utility stays the same. The next is given income. Income of the consumer is given and it is constant. Given prices. Prices of the commodities are given already. Perfect competition. There are many buyers and sellers in the market and law of diminishing marginal utility. These are all the assumption of equimarginal utility. Now, let's understand the explanation of these law of equimarginal utility. Suppose there are two goods and X and Y which consumer has to spend on his given income. So here we can say that the consumer is rational. He will try to spend his limited income on goods X and Y in such a way to maximize his total utility or satisfaction on both the goods. So here only at that point the consumer will be in equilibrium. So according to law of equimarginal utility, the consumer will in the equilibrium situation at the point where the utility derived from last rupee spent of each is equal. So here we can take one equilibrium assumption that marginal utility of X and divided by price of good X is equal to the marginal utility of Y and divided by price of Y, it's equal to the marginal utility of M. The marginal utility of M denotes the marginal utility of money. Here it can say that the marginal utility of goods X and the marginal utility of goods Y are known as the marginal utility of money expenditure because we can see as in a price of good X and Y. So they explain the theory where the marginal utility of one last rupee is spent on commodity X and the marginal utility of one last rupee spent on commodity Y are equal. Let's illustrate this example with the following table. These are the marginal utility of good X and Y, where we have seen that the units we have taken from 1 to 8, it defines that the marginal utility of good X is 50 and Y is 36. Here, what we can do, we can take the price of good X and Y. For example, let's take the price of good X and Y 5 and 6. So what we can do, we can here calculate the money expenditure. How to find it? The money expenditure can be find as the marginal utility of x divided by price of x. So here we can take price of good x equal to 5 and price of good y equal to 4. What we can do? We can divide by marginality of x divided by price of x. So let's find it. When we divide it, what we can find? 10. When we divide 50 by 5, that is 10. Again, we can divide 55 by 45 by 5, that is 9. Again, we can divide and so on. We can find the marginal utility of money expenditure by dividing the marginal utility of goods x divided by price of x. Same as in y also, what we can do, the price of good x, price of good y is equal to 4. What we can do, we can divide marginal utility of good y divided by price of y. We can find this. When we divide 36 by 4, what we can find? We can find 9. This. When we divide 32 by 4, we can find 8, and so on. We can divide marginal utility of y divided by price of y. So we can get marginal utility of money expenditure. Now, what to say? We have to spend on both the goods in such a way the last 1 rupee spent on commodity x and y are equal to the marginal utility of money. This equilibrium we have to satisfy. What we can do, suppose money is constant, so what we can say, rupees 1 is equal to 5 units, and the consumer will buy 6 units of commodity x and 5 units of commodity y. So what we can say, his total expenditure is 5 into 6. 5 its price and unit is 6, that is 30, plus price is 4 into unit is 5. What we can do? We can equalize the money expenditure. And how to find money expenditure? By multiplying the price of goods by the unit consumed. So here what we get? We get 30, and where we get 20. So the final answer is 50 on both the commodities. At this point, the expenditure is satisfaction is maximized. Therefore, he is in the equilibrium position. This is the diagram where the money expenditure, or maybe called as the marginal utility of money, taken in vertical, and quantity is taken in horizontal axis, where the marginal utility of money, that is where it's constant. The A to B line is describing the marginal utility of good x divided by price of x, and C by C describing the marginal utility of y divided by price of y, and these are the quantity of OH, which describe the goods x, and OK, which is the good y. So graphically it may be says that consumer is in equilibrium situation since marginal utility curve or goods slopes downward curve, depicting that the marginal utility of good x divided by price x will be so downward, and taking this income, the marginal utility of money be constant at OM units. Here you have seen that, and equal to marginal utility of money, where OH amount of goods is purchased equal to OK quantity of good y is purchased. Thus, consumer is buying OH of goods x and OK of good y. Then we can say that the marginal utility of good x divided by price x is equal to marginal utility of good y by price of x. It's equal to marginal utility of money. This is the consumer satisfaction point. Let's see the importance of equimarginal utility. The first importance is optimum resource utilization, where you have seen that the price of goods X and Y may be allocated in such a way that the marginal utilities of both goods are same and it maximizes total satisfaction. The second one is consumer equilibrium. Consumer achieve maximum satisfaction by equating the marginal utility per dollar spent on each good. The third importance is efficient spending, where it promotes wise and rational spending and avoid waste and overspending. The next is maximize utility, assure that the highest possible satisfaction is gained from a given income. The next important is set consumption priorities, where consumers choose the most satisfying priority goods to spend on goods. These are all the importance of equimarginal utility. Thank you, learners, for listening me. On the next lecture, we will discuss the consumer surplus and indifference curve.